Peter Stephan of the Tax Resolution Institute is here. This is the Tax Show with Peter Stephan. I'm Brian Whitman. And folks, I think we heard something very interesting there because one, and I know this from my personal experience with the Tax Resolution Institute, one of the key ingredients in resolving a tax problem is persistence. And you and I have talked in the past. I have seen commercials on late night television, these fly-by-night organizations that say they'll solve your tax problems. And these folks aren't in business anymore. They've gone away. They're just not around. You've been doing this a long time at the Tax Resolution Institute, and you are persistent. And there is no substitute for persistence. And again, if you've got a problem, if you've got a bank levy, if you've got a wage garnishment, if you have an unresolved tax issue, if you haven't filed for years, if you've got payroll tax problems, as we've talked about in weeks past here on the Tax Show, you can't handle this on your own. You can't pick up the phone and call Sacramento. You need to be in the hands of professionals, and I recommend a call to Peter Stephan at the Tax Resolution Institute. I'm going to give you the phone number. It's 800-658-7590, 800-658-7590. These success stories don't end with the few that Peter mentioned. How about $279,500? That's the bill. You're the taxpayer. You know, a good Sunday afternoon, you got a bill for $279,500. It's resolved for $1,085.
Yeah, it was $585 more than I offered because I only offered $500 on that one. And the revenue officer called me after reviewing the offer and of course, re-reviewing the income information and so on and so forth, and said, gee, I think his automobile is worth a little bit more money. And I said, which I had listed at $500, which is why I offered $500. And I said, well, gee, how much do you think it's worth? And she said, well, I think it's worth $1,085. And I said, so for another $585, can we get this deal done? And she said, absolutely, I'll fill out the forms. So she was very, very nice about it. The other extreme, of course, compared to the appeals officer we were just talking about, and that was done in very quickly once the local revenue officer got her hands on it. So we paid the extra $585, settled the $279,000 for $1,085.
I have a tweet from Megan. She asked about delinquent tax returns, and I think a question that a lot of people have, Peter, is if they make contact with the Tax Resolution Institute, will you help bring these folks up to date? And is that kind of one of the first things to do if people have delinquent returns, to bring them up to date before you can resolve the issue?
Absolutely. In order for the IRS to cooperate with us, all the prior returns need to be filed. That is to say, you need to be in compliance. And so what that means is that returns are filed, not necessarily that the taxes are paid. So we do returns back for federal purposes. There's no statute of limitations if you haven't filed, but typically we're doing returns for the last 3 to 10 years. Last year, the Franchise Tax Board, that is the California tax people
up in Sacramento,
were on a bit of a rampage. They actually were our best salespeople, knocking on people's doors, sending letters, garnishing wages, and levying bank accounts for people that they said owed taxes from the 90s. So we were doing tax returns from 1992, 3, 4, 5. Boy, I haven't done those in a long time, and I've been at this for over 30 years.
Right. One of the questions that a lot of people have, we're talking to Peter Stephan, of course, from the Tax Resolution Institute, taxresolutioninstitute.com. That is the website. This is the Tax Show. We're here every Sunday afternoon talking about taxes and tax problems and tax resolution. The number to call is 800-658-7590. 800-658-7590. If all of this conversation has you thinking, I think I might have a tax problem, because some people, a lot of people, let me rephrase that, have tax problems, and they haven't received a letter yet, Peter. California Franchise Tax Board hasn't contacted them. IRS hasn't contacted them, but they have years and years of unfiled returns. Is it appropriate to take action before you're notified by the feds or Sacramento?
Absolutely, Brian. That's actually the best way to go. It's interesting that you say they haven't received a notice. I have a longtime client whose daughter owes $280,000 in tax, and as we were coming up with the plan to figure out how to solve this problem. What happened was he got a notice in the mail because she's now using his address. She moved back to California,
right,
and so on and so forth from another state. And he got a notice for 1 year for $82,000. So he called me and said, "Gee, I don't want to go through all of this for $82,000. But we could probably pay that, but we can't pay the $280,000 that you were saying that we owed." And it's a classic case of I didn't get the notice, so I don't owe it. Well, we know for sure that he owes it because we had called the IRS. We got the transcripts, which typically is the first thing that we do to verify the information that we get from the taxpayer so that we don't make any unnecessary mistakes.
These offers in compromise and these success stories are really unbelievable. Again, folks, $5 million settled for $5,000, $500,000 settled for $1,050, $279,800 settled for $1,085, and a $36,000 tax bill settled for $500. If you have an unresolved tax issue, you've got to make contact with the Tax Resolution Institute. It is the Institute. TaxResolutionInstitute.com, TaxResolutionInstitute.com, or call them at 800-658-7590. That's 800-658-7590, and be one of Peter Stephan's success stories. I always say time flies when you're talking tax resolution. So check him out, TaxResolutionInstitute.com, 800-658-7590. We're here all through tax season every Sunday afternoon on The Tax Show with Peter Stephan from the Tax Resolution Institute. I'm Brian Whitman from The Morning Answer. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Brian.